Alexander Crowell arrived at a luxury hotel for a charity dinner, something he had done many times before. He was known as a successful businessman, respected, controlled, and always confident in public. That night was supposed to be simple. A formal event, polite conversations, and a quick return to his normal life. But what began as a routine evening would soon turn into something he never expected. As the dinner continued, tension started to grow at his table. Quiet looks turned into sharp words, and a private conflict slowly became visible to everyone around. A marriage that once looked perfect began to fall apart in front of donors, staff, and guests. Among the people watching was a waitress working the event, someone used to serving powerful people, but not used to witnessing their lives collapse so openly. What no one in that room knew was that this public moment would expose a secret far more dangerous than a broken relationship. A secret involving a child, a past that refused to stay buried, and a man who believed blood gave him rights no one could take away. How did a controlled millionaire become a target? Who was the dangerous man connected to his family? And why would a simple waitress become a key figure in what followed? Stay until the end to see how one decision changed everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what you think as the story unfolds. Alexander Crowell arrived at the luxury hotel dressed perfectly, as expected for a charity dinner, attended by important people. The event was formal, with large tables, soft lights, and staff moving carefully between guests. The purpose of the night was to raise money, but for most people there, it was also about being seen. Alexander sat beside his wife at the main table. From the outside, they looked like a powerful couple. He greeted donors, exchanged short conversations, and kept a calm posture. His wife stayed quiet, answering only when spoken to. The atmosphere around them felt tight even before anything was said. The waitress assigned to their section noticed this early. As she poured drinks and placed plates on the table, she saw that they were barely looking at each other. Alexander's face stayed controlled, but his jaw was tense. His wife's hands shook slightly when she lifted her glass. The dinner continued with speeches and applause, but at their table, something felt wrong. The waitress did not know their story, but she could tell this was not a normal silence between a couple. It was the kind that comes before an argument, not after one. As the dinner went on, the tension between Alexander and his wife became harder to hide. Their voices stayed low at first, but their body language changed. Alexander leaned closer to her, speaking with short, firm sentences. His wife replied quietly, but her tone carried frustration. The waitress noticed this while clearing plates. Each time she approached, their conversation stopped suddenly. When she stepped away, it resumed. Alexander's face grew tighter, and his wife avoided eye contact with him. Other guests at the table began to notice the discomfort, even if they pretended not to. Laughter from nearby tables contrasted sharply with the silence forming around them. At one point, Alexander pushed his chair back slightly, as if trying to create space. His wife crossed her arms, a clear sign of defensiveness. The waitress felt uneasy standing so close to them, sensing that the argument was building. She slowed her movements, giving them space while still doing her job. She could feel that something was about to happen, not because of raised voices, but because neither of them was willing to stop. The tension was no longer private. It was leaking into the room. Eventually, the argument could no longer stay hidden. Alexander spoke again, this time louder than before. His voice cut through the noise of the dinner. His wife responded immediately, her words sharp and emotional. Heads began to turn. Conversations at nearby tables slowed as people realized something serious was happening. The waitress froze for a moment, holding a tray near the table, unsure whether to step in or move away. The couple no longer cared who was listening. Alexander's controlled image started to crack as frustration showed clearly on his face. His wife looked hurt and angry, her voice breaking as she spoke. The tension that had been building all evening finally spilled into the open. Guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. Some pretended to focus on their food, while others openly watched. The room felt smaller, heavier. The purpose of the dinner was forgotten as attention shifted toward the couple. The waitress stepped back quietly, understanding that nothing she did could stop what was happening. The argument was no longer just between two people. It had become a public moment, unfolding in front of everyone present. As the exchange continued, the embarrassment grew. Alexander stood slightly, resting his hands on the table as he spoke. His posture was rigid, his tone firm and cutting. His wife responded while seated, but her words were clear and full of emotion. The contrast between them made the scene even more uncomfortable. People nearby could hear every word. The polished setting of the hotel only made the situation feel worse. This was supposed to be a controlled, respectful event, yet now it was marked by a personal collapse. The waitress watched from a distance, feeling the tension in her chest. She had worked many events, but this felt different. There was no drama for attention, no performance. It was raw and real. Alexander's image as a calm, powerful man was breaking apart in real time. His wife looked exposed and overwhelmed. Guests shifted in their seats, unsure where to look. Some servers stopped moving entirely, afraid to interrupt. The room was quiet now, not because of respect, but because everyone was uncomfortable. The dinner had lost its structure. What remained was a couple unraveling in front of strangers. The argument reached a point where there was no return. Alexander said something final, something that ended the conversation rather than continued it. His wife fell silent, her expression changing from anger to shock. The pause that followed felt endless. No one clapped, no one spoke. The waitress could hear her own breathing as she stood near the service area. Alexander straightened his jacket, trying to regain control, but the damage was done. His wife did not respond. She simply sat there, visibly shaken. The guests now fully understood that they were witnessing the end of a marriage, not a simple disagreement. The public nature of the moment made it worse. This was not happening behind closed doors. It was happening under bright lights, surrounded by people who would remember it. The waitress felt a strange mix of discomfort and sympathy. She had no connection to them, yet she could feel the weight of the moment. The dinner, meant to bring people together for a good cause, had turned into a scene of personal collapse. The evening ended in a way no one expected. The formal structure of the dinner dissolved as guests quietly prepared to leave. Conversations resumed in hushed tones, focused less on the charity and more on what they had just witnessed. Alexander remained standing for a moment before sitting back down, his face unreadable. His wife did not move. The distance between them felt final. The waitress continued her duties, clearing tables and collecting glasses, but her attention kept returning to them. She understood she had witnessed something important, even if she did not fully understand it. The luxury of the hotel could not hide what had happened. The tension, the argument, and the public embarrassment lingered in the air. When the room finally emptied, the silence felt heavy. The marriage had collapsed in front of everyone, leaving behind nothing but discomfort and unanswered questions. For the waitress, it was just one night of work, but she knew this night would stay with her, because it showed how quickly control, power, and image could fall apart when something deeper breaks. After the dinner ended, the atmosphere between Alexander and his wife was heavy and uncomfortable. They did not speak while leaving the table. Their faces showed that the argument from earlier was not finished, only paused. When they were finally alone, away from the guests and noise, the silence became unbearable. Alexander stood still, waiting for an explanation. His wife looked exhausted, as if she had been carrying a weight for a long time. She avoided his eyes at first, taking a few seconds before speaking. When she finally did, her voice was low and unstable. She told him there was something he needed to know, something she could no longer hide after what had happened at the dinner. Alexander listened without interrupting. His posture was tense, his expression hard, but he said nothing. He could sense that what was coming would change everything. The calm, controlled man from the event was gone. What remained was someone trying to understand why his life had suddenly started to fall apart. His wife then revealed the truth she had kept buried for years. She told Alexander that their son might not be biologically his. The words came out slowly, as if saying them too fast would make them even more painful. She explained that there had been a man in her past, long before things had settled between her and Alexander. She did not describe the relationship in detail, only enough to make the situation clear. Alexander's face changed as he processed what he was hearing. He did not raise his voice. He did not move. He simply stared at her, trying to make sense of something that felt impossible. The idea that the child he had accepted as his own might not share his blood was difficult to grasp. His wife continued, explaining that she had never been certain, and that she had convinced herself the past no longer mattered. Now, after the public collapse of their marriage, she felt forced to confront the truth. The silence between them grew heavier with every word. She then mentioned the man more clearly. He was a dangerous motorcycle rider, someone connected to violent people, and a life far from Alexander's world. She spoke his presence with fear, not nostalgia. This man was not just a memory, but someone she had actively tried to forget. Alexander's expression hardened when he heard this. The situation was no longer only about betrayal or trust. It now involved a person who represented risk and unpredictability. His wife explained that she had never told this man about the child. She had tried to keep the past buried, believing that silence would protect everyone involved. Alexander listened, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. The image of his family, already damaged, now felt unstable in a new way. This was no longer a private issue between a husband and wife. The mention of a dangerous man changed the nature of the problem completely. Alexander understood that this secret carried consequences far beyond their relationship. While this conversation unfolded, the waitress returned to the dining area to clear the table. She moved quietly, doing her job as she always did. Plates were half empty, glasses untouched. The tension from earlier still hung in the air. As she collected items from the table, she noticed Alexander and his wife nearby, standing close but clearly disconnected. Their body language told a story even without words. The waitress did not hear the full conversation, but fragments reached her ears. Short sentences, a shaken voice, a sudden pause that felt heavy. She sensed that this was no normal argument. This was not about money or stress. It felt deeper, more serious. She slowed her movements, trying not to draw attention to herself while still doing her work. Something about the couple made her uneasy, as if she were standing too close to a moment that should have been private. As she continued clearing the table, the waitress noticed the wife's face. It was pale and tense, her eyes filled with fear rather than anger. Alexander stood stiffly, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. The waitress had seen many couples argue at events like this, but this felt different. There was no shouting now, no dramatic gestures. Instead, there was a quiet intensity that made the situation feel dangerous in its own way. She did not know what had been said, but she understood that a line had been crossed. The family in front of her was dealing with something that could not be undone. She finished her task quickly, sensing that she should leave them alone. Still, the image stayed with her. The tension, the silence, and the expressions on their faces made it clear that whatever had just been revealed was serious and life-changing. When the waitress finally stepped away, she carried more than empty plates. She carried the feeling that she had witnessed the beginning of something much bigger than a broken marriage. She did not know details, names, or histories, but she understood that the family was facing a problem that would not simply fade with time. Alexander and his wife remained standing apart, no longer a united pair. The luxury of the hotel and the formality of the event no longer mattered. What mattered was the truth that had come out after the dinner. The waitress returned to her duties, but her thoughts lingered on them. She knew that whatever secret had been revealed would follow them beyond that night. Even without full knowledge, she sensed that danger, conflict, and loss were now part of their lives. The dinner was over, but the real consequences were only beginning. The truth did not stay hidden for long. The motorcycle man learned about the child and understood what it meant. He did not find out through chaos or violence, but through information that reached him quietly. Once he knew, he decided to act. He did not rush or react emotionally. Instead, he chose to step into Alexander's life directly. His decision was calm and deliberate. He believed that this situation was simple. A child existed, and by blood, that child belonged to him. He did not think in terms of family or care. He thought in terms of ownership and right. From his point of view, nothing else mattered. The past, the marriage, and Alexander's role were secondary. Blood was the only thing that counted. With that belief firmly in mind, he prepared to make himself known. He did not send threats. He did not cause fear. He believed he did not need to. In his mind, the truth alone was enough to give him power. When the motorcycle man appeared in Alexander's life, he did so openly. There was no aggression in his approach. He did not raise his voice or make demands in a violent way. He spoke directly and without hesitation. He told Alexander who he was and why he was there. His words were clear and controlled. He stated that the child was his by blood, and that this fact could not be changed. He did not insult Alexander, but he did not show respect either. To him, Alexander was simply the man who had been raising his child without knowing the truth. He made it clear that this was not a discussion or a negotiation. He was not asking for permission. He was stating what he believed to be a fact. His calm tone made the situation more unsettling. There was no anger to react to, no threat to argue against. There was only certainty. Alexander could feel that this man was not trying to intimidate him through force, but through belief. The motorcycle man explained his position without emotion. He said the child was his blood, and blood created a bond that could not be broken. He did not speak about love or responsibility. He did not mention care, time, or presence. Those things did not interest him. For him, the child represented a line that belonged to him alone. He believed that no matter how long Alexander had been in the child's life, it did not erase biology. He repeated that point more than once. His words were firm, but not loud. He wanted Alexander to understand that this was not personal. It was about what he considered natural law. Alexander listened, trying to process what he was hearing. The lack of emotion in the man's voice made everything feel colder. This was not a man seeking connection. This was a man claiming what he believed was already his. The clarity of his belief made the situation heavier, not easier. Alexander tried to understand how this moment had arrived so suddenly. He had lived his life believing control and preparation could prevent problems like this. Now, someone stood in front of him claiming a place that Alexander believed he had earned through years of care. The motorcycle man showed no interest in Alexander's feelings. He did not acknowledge the bond that had been built between Alexander and the child. From his point of view, time meant nothing when compared to blood. He repeated that no one could take the child away from him, because the child was his by nature. There was no discussion about what the child needed or wanted. The conversation stayed focused on ownership and right. Alexander felt the ground shift beneath him. This was not a situation he could solve with money or influence. It was a direct challenge to his place in the child's life, delivered without violence but full of certainty. The motorcycle man made it clear that he was not leaving the situation unresolved. He did not demand immediate action, but his presence alone was a message. He wanted Alexander to know that the truth was out and that it could not be ignored. He believed that sooner or later reality would assert itself. He did not threaten harm, but his confidence carried weight. He acted as if the outcome was already decided. To him, Alexander's role was temporary, something that existed only because the truth had been hidden. Now that it was known, he believed the balance would correct itself. Alexander felt a growing sense of unease. The absence of violence did not make the encounter safer. It made it more serious. This was not a conflict that would explode quickly and end. It was one that would stay, pressuring every decision moving forward. After the encounter ended, Alexander was left alone with his thoughts. The motorcycle man had said everything he needed to say. There were no dramatic exits or final words. He had simply stated his claim and left it hanging in the air. Alexander understood that this was only the beginning. The idea that someone else could claim the child as a matter of right shook him deeply. It was not just a legal or personal issue. It was a challenge to everything Alexander believed about family and control. The motorcycle man's belief in blood over care created a conflict that could not be ignored. Alexander knew that this man would not disappear or change his mind. The claim had been made, calmly and clearly. The situation had shifted, and nothing would return to the way it was before. Alexander believed that every problem had a solution, if handled correctly. After the encounter with the motorcycle man, his first instinct was to act the way he always had. He contacted lawyers, people used to handling complex situations quietly. Meetings were set, calls were made, and options were discussed. Alexander was calm on the surface but focused and firm. He explained the situation in direct terms, emphasizing his position, his resources, and his willingness to resolve the matter without escalation. Money was discussed as a tool, not as emotion. To Alexander, this was about protecting what he believed was rightfully his through legal and financial means. He trusted that contracts, agreements, and influence could close the situation. He had solved bigger problems before this way. Sitting across from his legal team, he felt a sense of control returning, even if briefly. He expected resistance, but not refusal. In his world, negotiation always led somewhere. When Alexander's offer reached the motorcycle man, the response was immediate and clear. There was no interest in money, no curiosity about legal arrangements, and no hesitation. The motorcycle man rejected everything. He did not argue or insult Alexander's approach. He simply dismissed it. To him, money had no meaning in this situation. Lawyers were irrelevant. The child, in his view, was not something that could be negotiated or transferred through documents. He repeated the same belief he had expressed before. Blood gave him the right, and no agreement could change that. Alexander realized that this man was not playing by the same rules. There was no fear of consequences, no concern about law or reputation. The rejection was not emotional, it was firm and final. This response unsettled Alexander more than anger would have. It showed that he was facing someone who did not value the systems he depended on. Alexander tried again, adjusting his approach. He removed numbers, softened language, and focused on structure. Still, the answer did not change. The motorcycle man remained unmoved. He did not counteroffer or delay. He did not ask for time. He simply refused. Each refusal made it clearer that this conflict existed between two completely different ways of thinking. Alexander relied on order, rules, and outcomes shaped by planning. The motorcycle man relied on belief and personal code. There was no common ground. Alexander felt frustration grow, not because he was losing, but because he could not even enter the game. Nothing he offered mattered. This was not a negotiation. It was a wall. For the first time in a long time, Alexander felt that his usual tools were useless. The realization forced him to face a situation he could not buy or manage away. While Alexander struggled to control the problem from his side, the situation was quietly unfolding elsewhere. At the bar where the waitress worked, unfamiliar faces began to appear. Motorcycle men started coming in more often. They did not cause trouble. They sat, ordered drinks, and talked among themselves. At first, it seemed normal enough, but the waitress noticed patterns. Their conversations repeated certain words. She heard mentions of a rich man and a kid. The tone was not loud or aggressive, but focused. They spoke like people sharing information, not gossip. The waitress did not interrupt or react. She listened while doing her job, cleaning tables and serving drinks. The presence of these men felt deliberate. They were not there by accident. As days passed, the motorcycle men continued to visit the bar. The waitress became more aware of their behavior. They watched who came in and out. They talked quietly, often repeating the same topics. The rich one, the boy, blood. The words stayed in her mind. She did not know details, but she felt the weight behind them. There was no laughter in their voices, no casual tone. It sounded serious, almost planned. She kept her distance, but her attention sharpened. This was not normal bar talk. The men were not interested in sports or work. Their focus never shifted. The waitress began to connect this with the couple from the hotel. She remembered Alexander and his wife, the tension, the silence, and the fear she had seen. The connection was not clear, but it felt real. The waitress did not speak to anyone about what she heard. She continued working as usual, but her awareness changed. Each time the motorcycle men entered, she watched closely. She noticed how they spoke about the rich man, as if he were an object, not a person. The boy was mentioned as something that belonged somewhere else. This made her uneasy. She did not know Alexander personally, but she remembered his face and the intensity of that night. The bar, usually a simple place of routine, now felt different. It felt connected to something larger and more dangerous. She understood that two worlds were moving closer together, one ruled by money and structure, the other by belief and force. And somewhere between them was a child being talked about as if he had no voice at all. The pressure did not come all at once. It started quietly, almost in a way that could be ignored. Alexander noticed unfamiliar faces near his house at different times of the day. They did not approach him or speak. They were simply there, watching, standing near cars or across the street. At first, he told himself it meant nothing. He was a public figure, and people often watched. But this felt different. The presence was too consistent. The same men appeared more than once. Alexander began to understand that this was intentional. The motorcycle man was not hiding anymore. He was making sure Alexander knew he was close. The message was clear without a single word being spoken. This was not about fear yet. It was about awareness. Alexander felt the weight of being observed, tested, and measured. Soon the presence moved beyond his home. Alexander noticed the same men near the child's school. They did not enter or cause a scene. They stayed at a distance, leaning against motorcycles or sitting in parked vehicles. Parents came and went, unaware. Alexander watched carefully, his body tense. He understood the meaning immediately. This was not random. This was territory being marked. The motorcycle man wanted to show that he knew where the child was, when he arrived, and when he left. Alexander felt anger rise, but also something else, concern. The situation had shifted. This was no longer a discussion about belief or right. It had become a silent challenge. Each appearance felt like a question being asked. How far would Alexander go, and how much could he tolerate before reacting? The pressure continued along the child's daily routes. The same motorcycles appeared along familiar streets. Sometimes they passed slowly. Other times they were parked where Alexander could clearly see them. No one spoke. No one touched the child. That was the point. The restraint made it more unsettling. Alexander understood he was being tested. The motorcycle man was measuring his reactions, his limits, and his fear. Alexander tried to maintain control. He adjusted schedules, watched more closely, and stayed alert. Still, the message reached him clearly. This was a warning delivered without violence. Alexander had faced business rivals and legal threats before, but this felt different. It was personal and constant. It followed him into his daily life, leaving no space to breathe. While Alexander felt the pressure building around his family, the waitress noticed something similar in her own world. As she moved through the city during her regular routine, she began to see familiar faces. The same motorcycle men from the bar appeared in different places, at intersections, near shops, outside places she passed every day. At first she thought it was coincidence, but the repetition made it clear it was not. These men were not just bar regulars. They were active, moving with purpose. She recognized their bikes, their jackets, their faces. The conversations she had overheard at the bar now took on more meaning. What once felt like distant talk now felt close. The waitress paid closer attention as she continued working. She saw the same men near residential areas and near the school zone. They did not interact with her, but she could feel their presence. They looked around, observed, and moved on. She remembered the words she had heard before, a rich man and a kid. Now she was seeing the people behind those words. The pattern was impossible to ignore. These men were marking space, not causing trouble. That made it more serious. She felt uneasy knowing that something was unfolding quietly around the city. She did not know Alexander well, but she remembered him clearly. The tension from the hotel dinner came back to her mind. By this point, both Alexander and the waitress understood that the situation was escalating without open conflict. The motorcycle man was applying pressure in a controlled way. Alexander felt watched, challenged, and pushed. The waitress felt surrounded by signs that something dangerous was moving closer. The same men, the same bikes, the same calm behavior. Nothing dramatic happened, and that was what made it worse. It was clear that this was not meant to end quickly. The pressure was steady and deliberate. It was meant to wear Alexander down and make one thing clear. The motorcycle man was present, aware, and not going away. Alexander reached a point where waiting no longer felt safe. The pressure around his life had grown too constant, too close. He believed that staying in the same routines only made things easier for the motorcycle man. Without consulting lawyers, security teams, or anyone else, Alexander made a decision on his own. He chose to leave with the child quietly. There was no detailed plan, no backup route, and no clear destination. He acted on instinct, driven by fear and urgency. For the first time, he ignored the structured way he usually lived. He packed only what felt necessary and left without drawing attention. The house that once felt like protection now felt exposed. As he drove away, Alexander understood that he was stepping into unfamiliar territory. He told himself that distance would buy him time. He believed that moving away from predictable places would reduce the pressure. Still, the lack of planning weighed on him. Every mile increased his uncertainty, but turning back felt impossible. As Alexander continued driving, he avoided main roads and highways. He chose secondary roads that felt quieter and less watched. The scenery changed slowly, but his tension did not. His hands stayed tight on the wheel, his eyes constantly moving between the road and the mirrors. He checked behind him often, even when nothing seemed there. The child sat quietly, unaware of the weight of the situation. Alexander tried to stay calm, but exhaustion began to settle in. He was not used to long drives without assistance or preparation. The sense of control he once had was gone. Each decision now felt improvised. He realized that leaving without a plan had created a new kind of vulnerability. Still, he continued forward, believing movement was better than staying still. The luxury and comfort of his previous life felt distant. What mattered now was staying unnoticed. Time passed slowly on the road. Alexander's body felt heavy, his mind crowded with thoughts. He replayed recent events repeatedly, questioning whether he had made the right choice. The lack of sleep and constant tension made it harder to think clearly. He had not expected the mental toll to be this strong. The child remained calm, which made Alexander feel both relief and guilt. He wondered how long he could keep going like this. Eventually, fatigue became impossible to ignore. His focus weakened and his reactions slowed. He knew he needed to stop even briefly. Continuing in that state would only increase risk. He scanned the road for a place to rest, something simple and unnoticed. When he saw a familiar sign ahead, he did not immediately realize its importance. He was too tired to connect the dots. Alexander pulled into a small bar along the road, seeking nothing more than a short break. As he parked, he felt a mix of relief and unease. He had no intention of staying long. He just needed a moment to gather himself. As he stepped inside, the environment felt ordinary and quiet. It did not match the tension he carried inside. Only after entering did he recognize the place more clearly. This was the same bar where the waitress worked. The realization came too late. He had not chosen the location carefully. His exhaustion had guided him there without thought. The coincidence unsettled him, but he tried to stay calm. He told himself that stopping briefly would not change anything. Still, a sense of discomfort settled in his chest. Inside the bar, Alexander stayed alert despite his fatigue. He chose a seat that allowed him to see the room clearly. The child stayed close to him. He did not draw attention to himself, keeping his movements minimal. The waitress noticed him almost immediately. She recognized his face from before, and the connection felt sudden and heavy. Alexander did not speak to her. He focused on resting and regaining clarity. The bar felt quieter than his thoughts. Even so, the weight of the decision he had made followed him inside. He knew that fleeing without a plan had brought him here, to a place he never intended to return to. As minutes passed, Alexander remained tense. His mind raced between regret and justification. He questioned whether stopping had been another mistake. The simplicity of the bar contrasted sharply with the danger he believed surrounded his life. He stayed only because his body demanded rest. The waitress continued working, aware that his presence was not random. She sensed that something was wrong, but she did not interfere. Alexander sat there, tired and exposed, understanding that his attempt to escape control had led him into an uncertain situation. The decision he had made was already shaping consequences he could not fully predict. The bar was quiet when the motorcycles arrived. The sound of engines outside did not cause immediate alarm, but it drew attention. A few customers looked toward the entrance as several motorcycle men walked in. Their presence changed the balance of the room right away. They did not rush or shout. They entered calmly, spreading out naturally as if they already knew the space. Alexander noticed them almost instantly. His body stiffened, and his focus sharpened. He recognized their faces from before. There was no doubt anymore. This was not chance. The men scanned the room, and when their eyes landed on Alexander, they paused. The recognition was mutual. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. They had found him. The bar, moments ago just a place to rest, now felt exposed. Alexander stayed seated, trying not to react. He understood that any sudden movement could draw attention. The child remained close, unaware of the shift happening around them. The motorcycle men did not approach immediately. Instead, they took seats, ordered drinks, and watched. Their calm behavior made the situation more tense. They spoke quietly among themselves, occasionally glancing toward Alexander. The other customers began to feel the change, even if they did not understand why. Conversations slowed. Some people stopped talking altogether. The air in the room felt heavier. Alexander kept his posture controlled, but inside, his thoughts raced. He knew he had made a mistake stopping here. This was their space. Their presence felt confident, not aggressive, which made it more dangerous. They did not need to threaten him. Being there was enough. Alexander avoided eye contact, focusing on staying still and quiet. He understood that this moment was not about confrontation yet. It was about control. The waitress noticed the change immediately. She had seen these men before, both in the bar and around the city. The moment they entered, she knew something was wrong. Her body reacted before her mind fully caught up. She felt tension rise in her shoulders and chest. She watched how the motorcycle men positioned themselves and how their attention focused on Alexander. She recognized his face and understood that he was the reason they were there. The shift in energy was clear to her. This was not a normal visit. She continued working, but her awareness sharpened. She slowed her movements slightly, observing carefully. She noticed how the men avoided drawing attention while still dominating the space. This told her that whatever was about to happen would not be loud or sudden. It would be controlled. Alexander could feel eyes on him even when he did not look up. The sense of being surrounded returned, stronger than before. His heart rate increased, but he kept his expression neutral. He did not want to signal fear or resistance. The child stayed close, and Alexander subtly adjusted his position to keep the child protected. The motorcycle men continued to sit and talk quietly. One of them laughed briefly, but it sounded empty. The sound did not relax the room. It made it worse. Alexander realized that time was not on his side. The longer he stayed, the more vulnerable he became. Still, moving too soon could trigger a reaction. He felt trapped between action and waiting, unsure which was more dangerous. The waitress moved behind the counter, pretending to focus on her tasks while watching closely. She could see how Alexander's posture had changed. He was no longer resting. He was alert. She understood that the situation could turn bad quickly, even without raised voices. The motorcycle men were patient. That patience worried her. She had seen aggressive people before, but these men were different. They acted like they owned the place. She noticed how other customers avoided looking at them. The room was responding to their presence without anyone saying a word. She understood that if something happened, it would happen fast. The danger was not loud. It was quiet and controlled. Nothing had happened yet, but everything had changed. The bar no longer felt neutral. It had become territory. Alexander knew he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The motorcycle men had not touched him or spoken to him, but their presence alone carried pressure. The waitress felt the same tension. She understood before anyone else that the situation was reaching a critical point. Violence had not started, but the conditions for it were forming. The silence, the positioning, and the recognition all pointed to the same truth. This was no longer just a bar. It was a space controlled by people who believed they had the right to take what they wanted. The waitress did not panic when she understood what was happening. She had been watching the motorcycle men closely since they entered. She noticed how they positioned themselves and how their attention stayed fixed on Alexander. She knew that waiting for the first aggressive move would be a mistake. These men did not act without control. They waited for the right moment. The waitress understood this type of behavior. She had seen it before. Instead of freezing, she started moving with intention. She raised her voice slightly while speaking to another customer, creating a small distraction. At the same time, she dropped a tray near one of the tables, causing noise and drawing attention. The sudden disruption broke the silence that had settled over the bar. People turned their heads, confused. The motorcycle men reacted by shifting their focus, even if just for a second. That second mattered. The waitress used it to change the flow of the room. As the confusion spread, the waitress continued acting without hesitation. She moved between tables, creating physical distance between people. She spoke firmly, telling customers to step back and clear space. Her tone was not emotional. It was direct and commanding. This made others listen. She placed herself where she could block direct paths, forcing movement to slow. The motorcycle men were no longer able to move freely without drawing attention. They noticed the change immediately. Their calm was still there, but now it required effort. The waitress understood that controlling space was just as important as controlling time. She did not challenge them directly. She did not accuse them of anything. She simply made the situation harder to manage quietly. This was intentional. She knew these men preferred control without witnesses. By making the bar feel unstable and loud, she weakened their advantage. While keeping the room unsettled, the waitress called for help. She did not shout or make a scene. She used the bar phone quickly and clearly, asking for assistance without explanation. Her voice stayed calm. She knew that panic would only make things worse. After the call, she returned to moving through the bar, continuing to delay and distract. She spoke to customers, redirected attention, and kept bodies in motion. The motorcycle men began to feel the pressure of time. Their patience was being tested. They could no longer act without being seen. This was exactly what the waitress wanted. She understood that these men avoided unnecessary exposure. The longer they stayed without control, the less comfortable the situation became for them. Alexander understood what the waitress was doing almost immediately. He recognized the opportunity she was creating. She did not look at him or give instructions, but her actions were clear. She was buying time. Alexander stayed calm and waited for the right moment. The confusion in the bar gave him cover. People moved around him, blocking clear lines of sight. The motorcycle men were forced to adjust their positions repeatedly. Alexander stayed close to the child, preparing to leave. He did not rush. He knew that sudden movement could still draw attention. He waited until the moment felt right. The waitress continued to keep the focus away from him, placing herself where attention naturally followed. When the moment came, Alexander stood and moved toward the exit with the child. The waitress noticed immediately and adjusted her position again. She stepped into the path of one of the motorcycle men, asking him a question and forcing him to stop. Her timing was precise. The delay was short, but it was enough. Alexander reached the door without confrontation. The motorcycle men realized what was happening, but reacting now would draw too much attention. The bar was no longer a controlled space. People were watching. The advantage had shifted. The waitress did not block them physically. She blocked them socially and visually. This made pursuit impossible without consequence. As Alexander left the bar with the child, the waitress continued to manage the situation inside. She did not celebrate or show relief. She stayed focused until the danger passed. The motorcycle men remained inside, frustrated but contained. They had been delayed just long enough. The waitress had not acted out of blind courage. She had acted with understanding. She knew that these men relied on silence, control, and fear. By breaking those elements, she removed their power. When the situation finally settled, the bar slowly returned to normal. The waitress stood still for a moment, steadying herself. She knew she had done what was necessary. Alexander and the child were gone, and that was the outcome she had aimed for. Alexander did not forget what happened at the bar. After leaving with the child, his thoughts returned again and again to the waitress and the way she had handled the situation. She had acted without panic, without fear, and without asking for anything in return. He realized that she had understood the danger faster than he had, even though this was his problem, not hers. That bothered him, but it also forced him to think. For the first time, Alexander accepted that he was dealing with a world he did not understand. His money, his lawyers, and his usual influence had failed him. What worked in that bar was knowledge of people, behavior, and timing. That knowledge did not come from boardrooms or contracts. It came from experience. Alexander understood that ignoring this would be another mistake. The idea of going back to her felt uncomfortable. He was not used to asking for guidance, especially from someone outside his social circle. Still, the situation had changed him. He needed perspective, not authority. That realization alone marked a shift. When Alexander decided to find the waitress again, it was not out of pride or control. It was necessity. He returned to the bar carefully without drawing attention. This time, he did not arrive as a powerful man or a customer passing through. He arrived with intention. When he saw her, he did not speak immediately. He waited, observing the space the way she had before. He noticed how she moved, how she watched people, how she understood the room without being obvious. When he finally spoke to her, his tone was different. There were no demands or instructions. He simply acknowledged that she had helped him. He admitted that he did not understand the environment he had been forced into. This was difficult for him. Alexander had spent his life leading conversations, not opening them. The waitress listened without interrupting. She did not act impressed or surprised. She had no reason to. Alexander explained why he had come back. He did not give details he did not need to. He focused on one thing. He needed to understand the people he was dealing with. He needed to know how they thought, how they acted, and what mistakes to avoid. He admitted that his usual methods had failed. Saying this out loud felt strange, almost exposing. The waitress did not respond right away. She studied him for a moment as if deciding whether he was serious. She knew men like him existed, but she rarely saw them admit confusion. When she finally spoke, she did not give advice like an expert or a teacher. She spoke plainly. She explained that people like the motorcycle men did not respect money or threats the way Alexander expected. They respected presence, territory, and perception. Listening to her, Alexander realized how little he understood about these dynamics. The waitress continued speaking in a simple and direct way. She explained that these men watched reactions closely. They tested limits without crossing them at first. They preferred situations where they could act without attention. What she had done at the bar was remove that advantage. Alexander listened carefully. He did not interrupt or correct her. This was new for him. He was used to filtering information, deciding what mattered. This time he absorbed everything. He began to see the recent events differently. The appearances near his house, the school, and the roads were no longer random pressure. They were signals. The waitress was not telling him what to do. She was explaining how to read what was happening. That alone was valuable. Alexander felt a strange mix of discomfort and relief. Discomfort because his ignorance was clear. Relief because someone finally made the situation make sense. For the first time, Alexander allowed himself to ask questions without expecting immediate solutions. He asked how to recognize when pressure would turn into action. He asked how these men decided when to move. The waitress answered honestly, even when the answers were uncertain. She told him that there were no guarantees, only patterns. She explained that patience could be more dangerous than anger. This stayed with Alexander. He realized how often he had mistaken silence for safety. The waitress did not exaggerate or dramatize. She spoke as someone who had seen enough to know when things were wrong. Alexander understood that this knowledge could not be bought or learned quickly. It came from living close to risk. He also understood that this woman was not trying to control the situation. She was simply explaining it. That difference mattered. As the conversation continued, Alexander noticed how much he had changed. He was listening, not leading. He was learning, not directing. This alliance was not based on power or obligation. It was based on necessity. He needed her understanding of this world, and she understood that the situation was serious. There was no promise made and no plan formed. What existed between them was something simpler, a shared awareness that the danger was real and that ignoring it would only make things worse. Alexander left the bar with more clarity than he had arrived with. For the first time since everything began, he felt slightly less blind. The alliance was not comfortable, but it was real, and for Alexander that made all the difference. The final confrontation did not begin with shouting or violence. It happened because the tension could no longer stay unresolved. The motorcycle man stood firm in his belief and repeated his position clearly. He said the child was his by blood, and that blood could not be ignored. For him, this was the only truth that mattered. He did not speak about time, care, or presence. He did not ask how the child felt or what the child needed. His words were direct and focused on ownership. Alexander listened without interrupting. He understood that this moment was not about convincing the other man. It was about standing his ground. The pressure he had felt for so long was now concentrated in one place. The situation was serious, and there was no space for hesitation. Alexander knew that whatever he did next would carry consequences. Still, he did not step back. Alexander responded calmly, even though the risk was clear. He did not deny the blood connection. Instead, he focused on responsibility. He spoke about being present, protecting the child, and making choices that kept the child safe. He knew that facing the motorcycle man directly meant exposing himself. He could not hide behind lawyers or distance anymore. This was a personal risk, not a legal one. Alexander accepted that. He understood that protecting the child required more than money or influence. It required standing in the open and taking responsibility for the outcome. His voice stayed steady as he spoke. He did not challenge the motorcycle man with threats. He challenged him with commitment. This was not an attempt to win an argument. It was a declaration of where Alexander stood and what he was willing to risk. The motorcycle man listened, but his expression did not soften. He repeated that blood gave him the right. To him, responsibility came after ownership, not before. This difference in thinking defined the conflict. Alexander saw clearly that this man viewed the child as something to be claimed, not protected. The danger of that belief was now obvious. Alexander did not need to explain it further. His actions had already shown his position. He had stepped into risk instead of avoiding it. He had stayed when leaving would have been easier. The confrontation made the contrast between them clear. One man focused on control and right. The other focused on care and responsibility. The situation was tense, but it was also clear. There was no confusion left about what each man represented. The waitress was present during this confrontation, watching closely. She did not speak over anyone or take control of the situation. Her role was different. She listened and observed, understanding both sides without belonging to either world fully. Her presence mattered because she could see the threat clearly. She understood the behavior and the tone behind the motorcycle man's words. When necessary, she helped make the danger visible. She did not exaggerate or accuse. She simply pointed out what was already there. Her perspective helped expose the risk that came with treating the child as property. She became a bridge between Alexander's structured world and the motorcycle man's belief-driven one. By being there, she removed the chance for denial. The situation could no longer be dismissed as misunderstanding or emotion. With the tension fully exposed, the meaning of the conflict became clear. This was not about winning or losing. It was about what kind of future the child would have. Alexander understood that protecting the child meant accepting ongoing risk. There would be no clean ending, no perfect resolution. Still, he chose responsibility. He chose to remain present even when it was dangerous. The motorcycle man was forced to face the reality that taking the child would not be simple or quiet. It would carry consequences and resistance. The certainty he once held was challenged. The confrontation did not end with force. It ended with clarity. Each person's position was now visible, and the cost of action was clear. The story ends with that clarity. Paternity is shown not as something that can be taken or claimed by force, but as something proven through responsibility. Blood alone is not enough. Presence, care, and protection define what it means to be a parent. Alexander accepts that this path is harder and more dangerous, but he chooses it anyway. The waitress, having witnessed everything, understands the weight of that choice. She has seen how different worlds collide and what happens when responsibility is tested. There is no celebration, no victory speech. There is only the understanding that true fatherhood is built through action, not possession. The conflict may have ended, but the meaning remains clear. Thanks for watching Muller Tales. If this story made you think, imagine what the next one might reveal. Here, every story hides a truth, a choice, or a consequence that changes everything. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Muller Tales, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Alexander's place? Your support helps these stories continue. See you in the next one on Muller Tales.